Aloha and welcome to this meeting of mystery, mystics, and metaphysics and relationship empowerment with psychic intuitive relationship coach Geralyn St. Joseph. Today's topic are your core archetypes. I have studied psychology. It is part of my degree from college, which was a little while ago, but I always was fascinated with Jungian psychology and the archetypes therein. What I'm about to talk about is loosely based in that. There are some remnants of it, but it is my experience. So it's how I have discovered these things as time has gone on and how it works in the different types of coaching and guidance that I give. It helps people see their place in the world and what is supposed to happen with it or why possibly they're going through certain things. And I find it to be very powerful when you can understand the lesson that you're supposed to get from different responsibilities and happenings in your life. It's much easier to move through it if you understand that. At least that's how I feel and what I've seen in my experience. What are the core archetypes? What I consider the core archetypes, there are 6. Each archetype has its opposite. So you have one side and then you have its opposite. We experience all of these things. So you're not always the villain, but you're also not always the hero. You may think of yourself that way, but that's not necessarily the way it is in reality. When I talk about reality, I'm talking about our shared reality with the people around you. Sometimes you will not be the best person in the relationship. Sometimes you will make mistakes also. And what we're going to do is we're looking at these archetypes from a neutral viewpoint to see what they can teach us. And then one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is look to see where you are now. I may include that as a separate journey, so that might be something that we need to link below. The core archetypes. The first 2 that are the easiest to understand because most people go through this is parent, child. These are 2 opposites. You have the child, which is the one that we all experience first, where we are in need of someone else. We depend on someone else for our well-being, for our health, to take care of us, to protect us, and to help guide us through life. Not everyone is an actual physical parent, but you could be a parent in that you're a teacher, you're a manager, you're somebody that people look up to because you have a strong personality. You might be a natural leader. These are all part of the parent archetype. Parent archetype is when you are responsible for taking care of someone or something else. It could be your cat. It could be an actual child. It could be your child. It could be someone else's child. It could be a building. Maybe it's the way you treat your car. The parent archetype is teaching you how to be responsible, not just for your own actions, but for how it impacts the world around you. The parent archetype is looking at the long view. So when we're raising children, we're raising our children to be safe but productive members of society. We want our children to be able to be successful. We want our children to have a good sense of self if we're good parents. Not everybody's a good parent. So when you're going through the parent archetype, if that's where you are right now, it's about upholding other people's autonomy while they are dependent on you. What does that mean? It means accepting that, yes, we are separate. Maybe we're not equal because you have more power as the parent than the child has. But your duty to give this child what it needs to be able to take off from solid ground to the best of your ability. As the child, if you're in the child archetype, and some people go through a lifetime through the child archetype and don't ever get past it. The child archetype is one who they recognize their needs. Being the child, it's about development and growth, being innocent and open, and being non-judgmental. Not everyone gets this from the child archetype. Some people hold on to the negative aspects of it. Some negative aspects of the child archetype are feeling entitled. It's about being spoiled. It's about not taking responsibility for yourself or your actions. Each archetype not only has its opposite, but they have their positive aspects and their what we would call negative aspects. All of these aspects are things that we can learn from. The next set of archetypes is the hero and the villain. Nobody likes to be the villain. That's not true. Some people love to be the villain. Some people love to bully. They like to feel like they have more power over people. They like to manipulate. When we talk about the hero and the villain, these opposites are someone who is coming in hopefully for the greater good in its positive aspect, but it could be that they're coming in but because they want to be the center of attention. They want praise. They need outside verification of who they are. They constantly need that validation. That's the negative side of the hero. Then you have the villain. The villain is the antagonist. They are the ones who create change in a situation. There are positive aspects to the villain. The villain gives you an opportunity to be good. The villain pushes the boundaries. The villain makes things uncomfortable. In a real negative aspect of the villain would be someone who destroys things just for the sheer enjoyment of destruction. Destruction has its place, just like being the hero has its place. All of these things have their place in the world, and they have their place in a lifetime. The third set and final set in this particular talk is the victim and the savior. And I know the other ones I did on the opposite hands. I don't know. Don't read too deeply into it. You have the victim and the savior. So the victim, you could be there in a positive aspect, or you could be there in a negative aspect. So there's a difference between being a victim, which we all are a victim at some point. You might be a victim of crime. You might be a victim of heartbreak. You might be a victim of financial stress. Or you could have victim mentality. And victim mentality, similar to the child, everything happens to them. They have no agency in their own life. Everything is somebody else's responsibility. It's somebody else's fault. They don't take responsibility. So the victim can help you see where your weaknesses are, where you need help, where you need to strengthen yourself, where you need to learn. The victim can help you help pull out of other people their savior. So what the savior does is the savior comes and saves the day, similar to the hero. The difference between a savior and a hero, the hero is there for a moment. The hero is just there to, Batman comes, beats up all the bad guys, sends him to jail, and he's done. The savior is somebody who is out there, and this is who they are. They are leading other people in a certain way. They are constantly putting down who they are and putting their own wants and needs on the back burner in order to save somebody else and to carry somebody else. So the savior carries other people. The hero will do it for a moment, but that's momentary glory. The savior does it for the long term. So someone with a savior complex is someone who feels like they have to save everybody. It doesn't matter. They need to run into that building, even though if they run in this time, they're going to die, even though they know there's no hope. There might not be anybody else in the building, but they're going to run in because they need to save everybody. It's not good enough to do what they can. Now, the balance between the savior and the victim is self-care. The balance between the hero and the villain is self-assurance. And the balance between the parent and the child is self-responsibility. When we have learned from each of these archetypes as we move through them, as we grow, and you'll move through the archetypes at different times in your life, and it'll look a little bit different, but it's the core message is the same, because we learn things in levels. But as you move through these archetypes, the faster you get the message, the faster you can get through that particular thing. You might be going through an archetypal relationship again because maybe your partner needs to learn that half. But always be prepared to move past it. It's about moving into the center, finding the center in these things, because either extreme has its negatives, it has its difficulties, it has its issues. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat and I will answer them as we move forward. So why do we need to know about these archetypes? One of the things about knowing the archetypes is that it helps us to figure out what our situation is and what we need to do about it and how to move through it. When I talk about moving through it, I'm talking about like creating growth for your sense of self, for your spirit, for your relationships. When you understand the archetypes, what ends up happening is that when you're in a situation, when you're in relationship, you will notice that some relationships will go into these archetypal patterns. When you find yourself in these patterns and you know what it's supposed to be teaching you or how to move out of it, then you don't get stuck in these. So one of the things like a lot of people complain about in relationship is the parent-child relationship in romantic relationships. How many times have you felt as a woman, I don't want to be your mother. I don't want to be expected to do all the housework and take care of you while you just throw your dirty clothes on the floor and expect dinner every night, even though we're both working full time. The parent-child relationship when you're a man and she's expecting you to pay everything, but you're both working full time, but you're the only one who's covering all the expenses and doing everything. And then you have this honey-do list every time you come home. Like there's no balance. She's not responsible. She still wants to go out and do her thing and go out with the girls. Or you could put the shoe on the other foot. The sexes don't matter. What matters is what it feels like to be in those types of situations. Do you have a person in your relationship who is always the one who's on? They're always the one who's taking care of things. They're making sure all the bills are done. They're making sure you get to work on time. They're making sure your doctor's appointments are done and your bills are paid and all that kind of thing. Do you notice that excuse me? Do you notice that you need more support from your partner than they need from you? Now, this is normal in a relationship. It can be still a healthy relationship, but it needs to fluctuate. It should not be that one person is completely dependent on the other person for everything. There needs to be balance there. And when you have somebody who takes more responsibility than the other, maybe because they just can at the moment, or maybe they make more money than the other. There's a lot of different things in a relationship that need to be balanced. Money is not the only thing and should not be seen as such. But when your partner is sick, whether you're the caretaker or the person being taken care of most of the time, when your partner is sick, you need to step up and then pull some more weight and move forward in that way. Problems arise when we get into these archetypal structures in our relationships, and then we don't move anywhere from that. We get used to it and we just stay there. And it gets very frustrating. Sometimes you don't even realize it's happening. You have the victim who everything's everybody else's fault, and they're constantly getting themselves into situations, and then the savior swoops in and saves the day every time. Whether that is a spouse or a sibling or a friend, this person just is always there for you. They're always calming you down. They're always making sure everything's okay. Or maybe you're that person. That is not balanced. It's not healthy. And then you find out, if you're the person who's constantly giving, that when you're in need that one time that you need it, this person is not going to be anywhere to be found because there's no balance in the relationship. And because you sit in those archetypes, and that's how you know each other, that's how you know what you're doing, each of you is doing, then that does not allow you to be there for one another and to delve into a more healthy relationship. I will do a class about this and how to move into a more healthy relationship. Like, what do we need to do to balance things out so that we have a better understanding of each other and that we create a better space for us to grow, for both of us to grow. There's no reason why you cannot grow as a person while in relationship. The key is that you're both growing, and you don't have to both grow at the same time. I mean, things are not always even. You might be growing and in two different ways. You might be growing at two different speeds, and then one might catch up. It's not about things being perfect all the time. It's about recognizing where you are. So if you understand your archetypes and you understand maybe we're in the victim savior archetypal structure, and this is not healthy. Maybe when you got into the relationship, you were in the victim savior archetype because maybe you were going through something really, really difficult and this person came in and helped you out. How do you move from that, where you're kind of locked into those roles, once whatever was happening is over, once that emergency is resolved and you don't need that help anymore? Do you then go into victim mode? Do you become a victim for the rest of your life? Do you go into child mode? Or do you guys come into the center and figure out how to interact with each other without having to be into these archetypes, into these two roles? One of the difficulties that we're dealing with as a society right now is that we have a lot of people and a lot of youth who think that everything has to be in a box, that everything has to be explained, and you have to have all these terms, and everybody's got to be able to neatly be put into a box. The whole point of growth and spiritual enlightenment is that there is no box. You get rid of the box. There's no more box. So part of the boxes that we put ourselves in are these archetypes. We can learn from the archetypes and move past that and see, okay, the victim archetype is supposed to be teaching me how to accept help from others. not how to take advantage of others. And then we move from there. So to wrap up, and I know this one was pretty quick, but I do want to get back to the question and answer portion. To wrap up, the core archetypes, in my estimation, that we go through in a lifetime, we don't always pass through them all. Sometimes we get stuck somewhere, but this will help us know when we're stuck. The core archetypes are the victim savior, the hero villain, and then the parent child. These are all energies that we move through. They're all ideas and ideals, and they all have a center balance. And that center balance is where we want to be. Like with the parent child, you want to move into adulthood. With hero villain, you want to move into good citizen. With victim savior, you want to move into good health. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, get them ready because we're going to go into the second half of this. If you would like to join us live at any point, we are on meetup.com. My name is Geralyn St. Joseph, and my groups are Mystery, Mystics, and Metaphysics, and Relationship Empowerment. You can find me on YouTube or look for me online at voiceofspirit.com, GeralynStJoseph.com, or Relationship Coach, G as in girl, S as in Saint, J as in Joseph.com. All righty, we're going to wrap it up now, and we're going to move into the second part of today's lesson, which is going to be a journey to meet your archetype, to see where we are right now. Mahalo for joining.